So how do you study a world that, well, that doesn't want to be seen? A world that pretty much operates in the shadows. Today, we're going to dive right into the fascinating and, yeah, ethically murky world of researchers who go undercover. They literally immerse themselves in hidden communities just to understand them from the inside out. So let me ask you something. I mean, have you ever hidden who you are just to learn the truth about something, to figure out what was really going on? Look, we've probably all done it in some small way, right? But for some researchers, this isn't just a casual thing. It's a professional tool. And it's a tool that, wow, it raises some really, really tough questions. Okay, so the formal name for this whole method is called participant observation. And honestly, you can just think of it as the ultimate form of people watching. Seriously. This isn't about standing on the sidelines with a clipboard and taking notes. No way. It's about diving headfirst into the world you want to study. And that could be a factory floor, a hidden community, or as we're going to see today, a casino.
All right, so this brings us to our main character, a researcher named Jun Lee, and her mission to understand the super secret world of female gamblers. Now, this was a really tough assignment. At the time, female gambling was definitely on the rise, but it was still totally shrouded in secrecy and stigma, which, as you can imagine, made it incredibly difficult to study.
So why go undercover? I mean, why not just ask? Well, think about it. The women in these situations were just not likely to open up to some outsider with a notepad. A researcher asking a bunch of questions could easily come across as, judgmental. Lee was convinced that to get a truly authentic picture, she had to basically become part of the scenery. So Lee laid out her game plan, her covert strategy. She argued that, look, revealing her identity in a busy casino, it's just not practical. It would totally disrupt the natural flow of everything. Plus, it would make people put up a front, act fake, or maybe just avoid her completely. And here's the crucial part. Since she wasn't going to name names or identify any individuals, she really believed the risk to their privacy was pretty minimal. And so the fieldwork began. Lai made something like 40 trips to casinos in Ontario. She'd take the same shuttle bus as the other casino goers, and armed with her research budget of just $20 a trip, she'd play the slots and just start talking to people. To anyone watching, she was just another gambler. But you guessed it, that's when things started to get really complicated.
On one of her very first trips, Lee meets 3 Chinese women. They see her there all by herself, and they get worried, like really worried. They pull her aside and start warning her about how addictive and dangerous the casino can be. And just like that, in an instant, the roles completely flipped. The people she was there to study were now trying to save her. As Lee wrote later, she felt really guilty and uneasy about her deception.
And then, it happened again. This time, she's on a bus ride back from a casino, and a white woman sits down next to her, absolutely determined to school her on the dangers of gambling. The woman thought Lee was just this young, impressionable university student, and she literally pleaded with her not to come back. Again, a total stranger felt this moral duty to step in and save her.
Okay, then there was a third encounter. Lai starts talking with a South Asian woman, and this woman shares a truly devastating story about losing $50,000. The conversation was raw, it was honest, it was exactly the kind of insight Lai was looking for. But feeling this pull to help, Lai revealed she was a researcher. And in that one moment, everything changed. The woman just went silent. The trust, gone. Instantly broken.
And you can really hear the struggle in Lai's own words here. I mean, she was completely trapped, right? These women were sharing their deepest stories out of genuine concern for her, but it was all based on a lie. Her whole search for the truth was creating this massive ethical conflict inside her. So this basically put Lee in a classic catch-22. It was a total damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Her undercover method, it was working. It was getting her this incredibly rich, honest data. But the cost was this real ethical distress. And the alternative, being totally open about her research, that was ethically correct, but it just made people clam up. It really seemed like she could either get the truth or be ethical, but there was no way to do both. So, what does she do? She tries being overt. She actually gets on the bus and announces she's a researcher. And the result? Bam! Immediate suspicion. One woman told her flat out, "I don't want my private life going public." And another one warned her, "The gamblers who come to you will lie to you. You won't get the truth." That wall just went up instantly. Now, to kind of understand the choices she had, it helps to look at this classic framework from a sociologist named Raymond Gold. He basically mapped out 4 possible roles for a researcher in the field. At one end, you have the complete participant. That's fully undercover, where lies started. At the other end, you have the complete observer, totally detached, like a fly on the wall. And the two roles in the middle are where you reveal your identity, but you just change how much you participate. So Lai was really wrestling with where she belonged on the spectrum.
So, what was her solution? Well, she found a kind of middle ground, a compromise. She adjusted her level of involvement and became what she called a detached insider. So she would still participate in the activities, like playing the slots, but she made a point to limit those deep, personal, one-on-one conversations. This was brilliant, really. It allowed her to observe the culture from the inside, but without actively tricking people into revealing their secrets.
You know, Liquider wasn't the first researcher to walk this ethical tightrope. Not by a long shot. In fact, this dilemma is basically as old as the research method itself. And to see its roots, we can go all the way back to the 1930s, to a groundbreaking study called Street Corner Society by a guy named William Foote White.
Get this. For 3.5 years, White, who came from a pretty wealthy background, lived in Boston's North End, a neighborhood he at first just saw as a slum. But because he was so deeply immersed, he discovered something profound. This community wasn't disorganized at all. It had its own really complex rules, its own hierarchies, its own social structures. His work pretty much became the blueprint for this kind of urban research.
And all this history brings us right back to June Lee's main point. Doing research in these really sensitive areas, it's just not about finding a simple right or wrong answer. It is, as she put it so perfectly, like walking a tightrope. It's this constant, delicate, and pretty precarious balancing act between finding the truth and respecting the people you're studying.
So when you boil it all down, both Lee's story and White's story point to the exact same fundamental tension. This quest for authentic, unfiltered truth about the hidden corners of our world, it often pushes right up against the boundaries of our standard research ethics. To get that kind of access, you have to navigate this really delicate moral gray area where the lines are they're not clear at all. Which leaves us with one final, really big question to think about. To truly understand a hidden world from the inside out, where do you draw the line? Where does being an observer end and being a spy begin?